Hello, beautiful stars. Welcome to another episode of Edgar Cayce Life Skills. So, this is a bio episode, and we are currently in his biography while he was living in Selma, Alabama. There is a playlist to all of the Edgar Cayce material, which we've gone through now two of his resource material books, and we hang out in his bio and go through it quite slowly. So there's a lot to catch up on. He is married to Gertrude. Hugh is born and doing well. They've already lost the second child. Gertrude was very, very sick with TB. She is now recovered. The whole family is down in Selma, Alabama. And I am Courtney, the host of Stars of the Morning Light, where we talk all things Edgar Cayce, Matrix living, and a few, I don't know, extra fun stuff. Let's bring it back to when recently his son Hugh, about 5 or 6 years old, had an accident. So Edgar Cayce he really wanted to be a photographer by profession, and he did. He was successful in it, but doing the ratings kind of started taking over. And Hugh, as a young child, he got up early that morning and he thought about playing a trick on the nanny. And he was fiddling around with, back when, 100 years ago, um, his father's equipment for in photography, and he thought about igniting some of it to play a trick, and it blew up in his face. We've already covered this, by the way. Please utilize the playlist in the description and go back and listen to the biographies. Well, it blew up in his face and it hit both eyes. And of course, Edgar and his wife, they jump out of bed. What was that? They find Hugh screaming, crying. His eyes are looking very scary for a parent. And they rush him to the doctor. That was not too far away, kind of across the street, down the road. And it ended up like three different doctors looked at Hugh. And all these doctors kept saying, "We think he's lost his eyes." Well, then Edgar did a reading, and Edgar gave them the instructions as to heal those eyes. And they did those instructions, and it did work. So that is the time frame that we're kind of at. But we're going to kind of move forward a bit, as in Hugh growing up, Edgar's life. So Edgar does have his photo studio above some general store in Selma, Alabama. Beloveds, I do want you to know that I am trying to plan a trip down to Selma to do a presentation about Edgar, and I know that that studio does exist. But word on the street is that nobody's been up there for quite some time. Um, why? We don't know. That's up to the owner. But there are still some buildings there and some of his photography equipment presented there. So I do hope to take pictures of those. There has recently been pictures of when I did my trip to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where Edgar was born and raised and is buried. That is in, I've posted a lot of them. I did go to his grave site. Beloveds, understand that that trip ended up having to move very fast, extremely fast, so I did not get enough time, quality time spent. I am considering going up to Hopkinsville by myself at some point to spend more quality time with what is provided there in the museum, and spend a bit more solo quality time at the gravesite. What I will say is, when we found it, the items that people leave on the grave are fascinating. They really are. They're fascinating. A lot of stuff that I'm sure has to do with the individual and not for Mr. Cayce, which is okay. I don't think Edgar cares one way or another, really. There were a few items that questionable if he would care or not, to tell you the truth, but that's okay. His wife's grave, Gertrude's, was right next to him, and it was emotional. I will say that for me, it didn't. My emotions were there, but then all of a sudden they kind of came flooding in when I started noticing all the other graves around, because they're all people that you now, I know about, you were learning about through his biography. So there were a lot of names and characters all around him that I guess I wasn't expecting that for some reason, even though I don't know why I wouldn't be expecting that. And so when I saw all the others with Cayce and Gertrude right there, that ended up being somewhat more it's what my emotions were already kind of triggered and present, and that's what made them come to full surface, I guess I would say. Um, I do plan on spending more quality time there. The museum was great. And in the Hopkinsville, Kentucky Christian County Museum, one thing that stood out to me the most, because they have just a kind of a small section about Edgar, I should say two things. First of all, there's an image of Edgar that I'm going to post once this video airs. I'm going to post that image, and it's him. He clearly went fishing. I had never seen this photo of him before. Edgar had gone fishing, and he was holding up this big line of all sort, tons of fish, and he had a grin from ear to ear. And when I kind of turned the corner to walk into the room that's dedicated for Edgar, I saw that first, and it was such a great image. It was so good. And I had never seen it before. A lot of things I've seen. So I will definitely be posting that once this video airs. And the other aspect that really I paid close attention to was because we've already covered it in previous biographies here at Stars of Morning Light. The raid that happened on Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And so I'm going to briefly jog everybody's memories. They knew that that raid was going to happen, but the raid actually ended up being much bigger. And the reason it ended up being much bigger, beloveds, as we remember, for those who have been sticking with me, thank you, cheers, thumbs up to you. It became much bigger because the head of, these bad guys, these raiders, the head of them had been arrested and was in Hopkinsville, and he was due to go to trial. And this happened all the time. That's not what triggered such a big raid. What triggered it is the judge got a reading from Edgar on what to do with that guy that was waiting in jail for his court date. And the Akashic said, yeah, he's a bad mamma jamma. You would be doing right if you locked him up for a good period of time. Well, once his boys heard that Edgar did a reading, and that's why their man is locked up for a good period of time, the raid was already going to happen because they were doing raids all over different states. Kentucky, Tennessee, they were doing raids. Missouri, they were doing raids. But this raid ended up being much bigger than what was expected because of that. They saw it as, you asked a psychic? You talked to a psychic? How dare you? And so when I was in the museum, they had a big, billboard explanation, all this stuff as to what went on in that raid. And so I might research even more of that if I can find more information. It was extensive. So when I retold this story before from doing his bio previously with you all, and remember everyone, after that raid, that's when the town too also started to shift in how they accepted, or I should say, didn't accept Edgar anymore. And this is his hometown. But it's because I did not understand the extent of how big that raid actually ended up being because of it. Uh, they took over huge mills, they took over stores. I mean, the extent of that raid was significant of what happened after said reading and trial. So I want to maybe do a snippet, maybe I'll do a short, maybe a short video. I need the time to be able to research that a bit because when I read all that description, they showed me the map of all the places in town that were taken over by these raiders. I could not imagine at the turn of the century. I could not imagine. Yeah, much bigger than what I had described before. Hence why the peoples of Hopkinsville kind of turned on Edgar. And honestly, folks, they lost a lot. So we're not judging them. We're not judging Edgar. We're not judging the judge who decided to do that sort of thing. Um, it's an explanation. It's a more of an understanding as to why. Because those raiders took over so much. Those people lost so much. So I wanted to iterate that because I just learned that with my trip to Hopkinsville in this past March. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back and utilize the playlist of the Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies and listen to all of the bios. I love doing his bios because it humanizes the sleeping prophet. Oftentimes, you'll see in your feed, oh, the predictions for 2026 by Edgar Cayce. Oh, this, oh, that. And it focuses so much on the ratings and not the man. So moving forward, we are in Selma. Hugh is entering school. His eyes are better. At that time, too, Edgar had, right after they fixed Hugh's eyes, he was then having symptoms. And this is just jogging people's memories of the last episode. He was having symptoms, and it was in relation to a situation when he was young, and an accident when he was young. And that cleared up. Then Hugh enters school. Things are going along. Gertrude's doing okay. The photo studio shop is doing okay. But then Hugh starts getting bullied at school. And at first, Edgar is saying, hey, just laugh with them. I don't care what they call me. Because they were picking on Hugh about who his father was. Because Edgar's readings were picking up as well. Photo studio and readings. All done above this general store. And that building is still there in Selma, as I'm saying. So Hugh starts getting picked on at school. You know, they're calling his dad all these things. And of course, they're probably saying, yeah, you must be a freak too. All that stuff. And Edgar kept trying to get Hugh to, hey, laugh with him. Joke about him with him. You can call me whatever if that's what's needed. I want, son, don't fight. Don't get angry. It's what happens. Well, that only lasted so long. And if anyone, I don't have an image of Hugh to present to you right now, but Hugh ended up being a bigger man than, let's say, his father or mother ever would have been. He got a bigger gene, let's say. And so as Hugh was growing up in school, he decided to start fighting. And he started to realize that if he took a few blows and was knocked down some, it would just make him a better fighter. And so it got to a point that actually everybody kind of started leaving Hugh alone because he became as good as he did at fighting. And so Edgar was never appreciative of that, but at some point he kind of had to wash his hands and be like, boys are going to do what boys are going to do. Clearly, I tried teaching him, laugh with him, walk away, whatever, all these things. And Hugh just kept going, no, I'm not doing that no more. I'm not doing that no more. So poor Hugh, he just from offshoot of his dad was picked on. Didn't really have a friend base. Didn't I didn't feel like he belonged. So there's this one story or instance that in high school or later in school, I should say, um, he skipped school and he goes swimming in the creek, the river. There is like a river that runs through downtown Selma, and the his dad's shop is not too far from there. But in this particular area, um, down further, Hugh skips school and he goes swimming. And he gets back home that afternoon, and his dad just turned to him and said, I know where you were. I know you skipped school. I know exactly where you were swimming. I know exactly this. I know exactly that. I know exactly. And he, and Hugh just thought to himself, oh goodness, I'm never going to be able to do anything. My dad can read my mind. Could you imagine being a child of knowing that you have a parent, that you are a child of a parent that is capable of knowing every single thing that you do? Take that in, beloveds. Poor Hugh, as growing up as a young man. That cannot be easy. So also at this time, oh, there was this really cool, I do want to say, there was something that happened really cool. Um, Not so much for them at the time, but Edgar, because there was no explanation. So Edgar always kind of partnered up with some kind of doctor, some kind of hypnotherapist, some kind of something, right, to run the sessions. Um, and one of the doctors, Dr. Gay, in Selma, Alabama, uh, brought Edgar to a new facility who had x-ray machines. And they were thinking, well, Edgar, you're amazing with photography and you give a medical readings all the time. Maybe if you worked as an x-ray technician because you already know photography, well then you would be in the building and we could just get readings from you here. That was the angle that they were taking, okay? So, and Edgar was kind of up for anything, experiences. And so he goes and they teach him how to use the machine. And every image that Edgar took on the x ray machine, it was as if, and this is what's awesome, because we're 100 years forward now, people. It was as if they write it and describe it as if there's the image of the person, but then there's as if there's another person in front of them or to the side of them. It's not the standard kind of x-ray machine we have of today, where it's like, okay, we see the bone and a little bit of that haze of the outline of the body. No, this was more of, okay, we're seeing the person, the skeletal of the person and the person, but then there's like another person in front of them or next to them or behind them, to the point that they had no explanation as to what was going on with Edgar and why he was incapable of basically taking a proper x-ray image when he is like a supreme winning national awards type of photographer. Why can't you just take an x-ray? Well, beloveds, as all these episodes are to bring what was 100 years ago, 100 years forward, because this was around 1915 or so, 1917, when he tried this. We now have, with our technology of today, cameras that take pictures of your aura. I believe that's what was going on. I believe that that's what was happening just because it was Edgar behind the machine taking the image. And so he was getting in every shot the person skeleton, or what have you, right? The body. And then I think he was getting the person's aura because of whatever was going on with that particular type of technology. And then you mix in with the Edgar Cayce energy. That, I believe, is what was happening. Today we have it. Today we have these images. We have this technology to take a picture of someone and also see their aura. Sorry, sorry, aura. We have that now. So it's interesting to know that Edgar, he was always beloved. He was always in his readings, in his work. He was always inviting and inventing new things into the world. From radiology type of machines to different, he, with his readings, he was able to expose things that and give advice and give information. Remember in one of the bios when we talked about Tesla and him talked a lot. Unfortunately, all that information is burned. But a lot of inventors talked to Edgar. A lot of the people in the medical field, when it was like, okay, build this device, and this device is what's going to save. There's tons of that out there that has contributed to Edgar. Remember in one of the very early bios, um, the surgery of the knee, on the kneecap. Well, you're going to take a big old screw and you're going to put it into that kneecap. No one had ever done that before. So much in our world is actually contributed to Edgar Cayce, especially in the medical world, that we don't necessarily think of him when we see that object or we use that machine. We don't necessarily think of it or think of him when it was from him. So I thought that was just, I thought that was humorous and fun to know that, yeah, he was actually taking their picture of their aura. So they're living in Selma. Hugh is growing and fighting and growing and fighting and skipping school to go swim in the creek. Um, they're just living life. They're doing fairly well. And Edgar's, he is now doing so many more readings. So many more readings, beloved. Remember, it was in Selma that he flourished. He started to thrive and flourish. And it was because after a very long back and forth, all those walks in the wilderness, the dark night of the soul, coming to some form of acceptance of self prior to even settling in Selma. Please utilize the playlist. So in Selma, the community embraced him. He was a part of a church as he always wanted to be. He was a head deacon. He was running church camps in the summer that people were coming from out of state to be with this man. It is still, I guess, in that church's history, which that church might still be in Selma, I believe. In that church's history, and actually kind of globally, that he was running one of the largest Sunday school services, classes, what have you, after service on Sunday, Sunday school afterwards. People from miles and miles and miles around were coming to hear what Edgar had to say about that particular scripture. It was amazing. So he was thriving and doing so good in Selma. And at one point, uh, who was it? It was one of the business fellows. One of the business fellows that he was with. Oh, it was someone from where he came from in it was Edwin Williamson, the general agent of the Southern Railroad in Selma, who was interested in a writing career in Hollywood. So, the general agent of the Southern Railroad in Selma, Edwin Williamson, wanted to actually be a screenwriter. He wanted to get into Hollywood, and at that time, beloveds, this is at, I think, 1917. 1917, whoa, what's going on with these motion pictures? What is this Hollywood thing? What is that? I mean, it was taking the world by storm, right? I mean, it was the most fascinating, glorious thing we could witness. And for anybody, right? Kids loved going to motion pictures. Everybody wanted to then be an actor, actresses, screenwriter, all this stuff. Hollywood stayed that way for quite a long time until just recently. So he approaches Edgar about doing a reading. And the reading was, hey, I really want to be a screenplay writer. Um, can you tell me what to write? Can you give it to me? Kind of like how people use AI of today. That's a whole different subject, and it's a whole different category of thoughts based around those things. But please make note of that. Hey, Edgar, who apparently can connect and tap into forces we're not able to, some kind of Akashic record that apparently is the full database of all things. You can tap into that. Can you just give me a screenplay? So Edgar's like, actually, that might be fun. I love it. Why not? Why not see what happens? Let's experience. Let's experiment and experience and live life. So, what Edgar did not know though is that at the time that the reading was supposed to take place, like Edgar's gonna lay down, somebody's gonna put him into a hypnotic state, they're gonna ask for the screenplay. Edgar did not know that how this was really set up was before Edwin contacted Edgar, he talked to the CEO of Universal Studios and said, hey, I know this guy. I know this guy that probably could write the best screenplays ever. I want to see what he can do. Well, 1917, spiritualist movement. Whoa, what? So then Universal is now, they're involved before Edgar is even near getting a reading for it. So the head honcho of Universal Studio decides, okay, out in New York, we're going to assemble like the actress that we're thinking about really kind of boosting her career. She's going to be the next big thing. She should be our lead. So ask him about a movie that should have her in it. They assembled all these people in a theater to, and they had a bunch of newspaper reporter men there that when Edgar would give the reading, it was immediately sent to them. So hear me out. In New York, so Edgar's down in Selma. In New York, in a big theater, they had all sorts of Hollywood, from screenwriters to actors, directors, all these people there. They did this, someone did a brief presentation about hypnosis and apparently what Edgar can do. Then the woman that they wanted to become this next big actress, she kind of sang and danced, "This is who I am." And then they allowed the room to go quiet at the same time as when Edgar would be starting his reading in Selma, Alabama. And Edgar knew nothing about what was happening in New York. So he gives the reading. and it is dictated to him like, give us a full screenplay that can, the lead actress can be this female. You know, they gave him some parameters, and he just did. I guess it was, it said it was 140 pages long. So in the room with Edgar, somebody's, typing this, and they're sending it, typing it, sending it, typing it, sending it to the newspaper guys in New York that can that can receive that fast and interpret it that fast. Think wire. All of this is done over long distance wiring. Okay? So different. It's not like anybody was on the phone or there was a computer. It was all done by different wiring. And it was about 140 pages, which is decent. That is actually, so you guys, if you don't know, here's a little footnote. A standard screenplay is 120 minutes. It can go to 120 pages. It can go to 140, but those are your bit longer movies. Think of each sheet of a screenplay, right? Each page is 1 minute long of film. There you go. That's a little fun fact. So, all this was happening. Edgar found out later. Of course, he received a copy of what came out of him as far as a screenplay, and that also burned. We're going to talk about it in a minute. There's another fire. Apparently, there was still one copy, but we don't know if it's in circulation anymore. That copy went to, I'll read. The film never got made, and the screenplay reportedly became property of legendary producer Thomas Inc. So, the movie was never made. What was interesting is this was the premise. So this is the premise of the movie. Oh, and the title of the movie was Through the Subliminal. This was in 1917 when Edgar is reciting a screenplay for them to dictate and wire over out to California, or actually New York, I should say, at the time. So the title was Through the Subliminal. One account read like this, so this is in quotes. His psychic self, traveling more than 1,200 miles on a space, a line, oh my God. 1917. Hold on. No wonder they didn't make this. His psychic self, traveling more than 1,200 miles on a space annihilating train of thought, the first psycho-scenario writer of recorded transmute from Selma, Alabama to New York, a 5-reel scenario for Miss Valentine. That is how it probably started. Remember when the Akashic would start speaking through Edgar, it was, this is the account, this is the entity, this is this. So they're saying, this is traveling 1,200 miles on space annihilating train of thought. Wow, I don't even know what that would mean. The first psycho scenario writer of record transmuted from Selma. We're going to come back to this. There's a reason why. We're going to come back to this. So it was never used, beloveds. It was never used. It was never used. It does not state if Edgar had feelings about knowing what was going on in New York or not. It does not state. I think, if anything, for Edgar, he was thinking, wow, what an experience. Wow, is it a decent movie? Right? Wow, Maybe if it does get sold, maybe that's something I can get extra money for later on. Because remember, he was trying to make his readings available to everyone, but in doing so, he understood that money had to come from somewhere. So maybe he had all those thoughts, but nothing happened with it, anyways. Maybe he did. I love this part though. So let's move on to this because this is why I wanted to say that that whole like traveling 1,200 miles, transmuted, blah 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 blah. This is right. This kind of plays into it, and I'm actually going to read this. Both. So we're talking about the same guy. That Edwin, the one that was of the railroad, he and his kids still got involved in Hollywood. I think he went out there and became some kind of producer. His daughter did something. His son ended up being a voice for radio. So they went to Hollywood regardless. Before leaving for Hollywood, however, Williamson asked one more favor of Edgar. He wanted him to try using a Ouija board and presented him and pestered him, until he finally agreed. So Edgar had never done that. Think, this is 1917. And we're going to kind of end on this story or where this chapter ends because headed in after that is of World War One, and so there's a lot more detail involved. A lot more detail. And remember, he had that beautiful Jewish family that he became very close with, and the son ended up being one that really respected Edgar. They got along as friends really well. He conducted a lot of the readings. We're going to get into what happened with him and all sorts of involvement of the World War One aspect in the next bio episode. So before Williamson left, he's like, "Hey Edgar, can you use this Ouija board thing?" And then he pestered Edgar till he finally gave in. Edgar enlisted the help of Gertrude, his wife. Together they sat down at a table and put their hands on the pointer. Hugh Lynn, who sat beside them, was impressed. This is quotations from Hugh. "I never saw a piece of wood carved like that did. It was exactly like there was a line of unseen people standing up, and they could have only 3 seconds or 3 minutes to give their little speech, and the next one would come on." So Hugh was talking about what he witnessed as Edgar and Gertrude are asking whatever questions they're asking to whoever is showing up, and somebody's recording it. And think Ouija board, so 2 fingers down, Edgar's doing it, Gertrude's there, they're doing it. The first message to come through was from a boy who had been in Edgar's Sunday school class and had gone to the army where he had died. He had given Edgar payment on some insurance, which Edgar had forgotten about and put in an envelope in his desk drawer, which was where it was found later. Another message came through from someone saying that he wanted Edgar to go and talk to his brother because his brother was going to soon die of a heart attack, and he wanted Edgar to prepare him. The most astonishing message was from a teenager who said he had drowned in a pond in Ohio. His family had thought that he had run away. According to the message, he had gone swimming to another farm, hit his head and submerged on a submerged stump and died. He said his body was caught in barbed wire under the water and was still there. He wanted them to discover the body so that they knew he had not run away from home. Williamson later wrote to the family, who wrote him back saying they had retrieved the body. Hugh Lynn never again saw his father put hands on a Ouija board. Like the practice of automatic writing or drug-induced hallucinated states, Edgar believed that more harm than good would result. And these are Edgar's words now. A lot of good stuff has come through Ouija boards and automatic writing, but a lot of people have gotten disturbed through it too. The balance is on the negative side. The balance is on the negative side. So as Edgar is admittedly willing to try almost anything, clearly doing a reading and bringing it from Selma, Alabama to New York as the first psycho scenario writer of Record Transmuted. That's wonderful. As he's willing to do stuff like that, he tried it once. He tried the Ouija board once. He stayed clear. And this is not to be in judgment. Do as you will. But at this time, beloveds, think spiritualist movement, automatic writing was becoming hugely popular. Ouija boards were becoming hugely popular. When for Edgar, his information's traveling from 5,000, 12,000 miles space conduit, blah, 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 right? It's more of what Einstein would refer to as an Einstein-Rosen bridge, right? When those two came together, and it's like Einstein-Rosen bridge. That's how things are being kind of transmitted to Edgar. Ouija boards, automated writing, all of the stuff that was becoming extremely, extremely, extremely popular. I mean, this is when, before the war and after the war, that everybody was wearing pretty much like very white makeup because they wanted to look dead. They were wishing to look dead. It got very weird. It got very weird at that time. As much as we want to study these people and as much as we want to understand what they did and what they knew and what they practiced and their skills and whatnot from that time period, the turn of the century, the turn of the 18th to the 19th century. As much as we want to research this stuff, within it there is a lot of macabre, a lot of death, a lot of mysterious things that were, as Edgar stated, the balance is on the negative side. So even though a lot of good things can come out of all that stuff, a lot of good things can come out of, oh, they got to find that body that was stuck in the water. A lot of good things can come out of that stuff. I have to agree with Edgar. I will never change on this. That a lot of the tools that are still floating around from today that were created then or got more hype then, a lot of those are balanced more on the negative side. And we even mean that for the automatic writing, however you want to say it. That is when you just completely open yourself up to whatever comes through and you just write it. That is not the same as like you journaling and just allowing your thoughts to flow. Just allowing your thoughts to flow. Just allowing your thoughts to flow. So this Saturday, I am interviewing Mary Jo Tarvin, who is a psychic channeler, and she's going to be doing a Matrix Living episode with us. That's going to air April 25th. Check it out, 9 p.m. And she's running a wonderful sale all of May 2026 for 30% off any of her readings. She, beloveds, has been trained. She also does a lot of things to make sure that whoever, whatever she's communicating with is on, let's say, a better side of the balance. With any of that stuff, and Edgar, we've talked about it in his bios. They, the best readings were when they were all praying together beforehand. The best readings are when it's, all the good energies are presented. I'm just making us aware that Edgar believes this way, and so do I. I'm not in judgment of anyone who uses those tools, but that is fundamentally my opinion on it. Is that, is it necessarily bad, quote unquote? No. But it does open up to things that many of us are not aware of. And then by the time we become aware of them, it might be too late. So, training, learn, and set it up within the music, the harmony, the prayer of all greatness. I'm going to read this last little bit because this is such a good little part to leave off on. Like I said, the next bio episode will be headed more towards what was going on with Edgar during World War One and the amount of readings and life and whatnot. So it'll get a little bit more intense, but I like how they ended this chapter here with a little touching story of how I see just how energy works, just how all of it works. Another reading from this period is particularly touching. It was given for a pregnant Hopkinsville woman, Eddie Jones Smithson, a relative of Cayce's, whose family had little confidence in the readings but were desperate for any help they could get. Mrs. Smithson had a dream that indicated to her to ask her younger sister to write for a reading. Cayce gave the reading upon receipt of the wire. It said that there was little hope for Mrs. Smithson's recovery, but there could be drugs given to keep up her strength and vitality until the baby was born. The reading said that although the mother would die, her child, a baby girl, could be assured good health. The reading was sent to the sister, who had a physician prepare the compound that Cayce had recommended. Mrs. Smithson's reportedly lived for 40 days, dying a few hours after her child, a little girl, was born. A few years later, when Cayce was in Hopkinsville, he would sit down in a barber shop, and a child, who had been playing around the room, gave him a strange look, and then came over and climbed onto his lap. She put her arms around his neck. And the barber, who was shaving the girl's father, told him somebody was talking to your little girl. The father got up, asking the barber who this man was. When he told him it was Edgar Cayce, the father went over to him, introduced himself as the husband of the late Eddie Smithson. He expressed his amusement that his girl, who had never laid eyes on Cayce before, who rarely approached strangers, seemed to be so familiar with him. Edgar didn't know how this could be possible, but acknowledged, as he did the man, that God worked in mysterious ways. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. We never know the good work that we're doing. We never know what readings, how they can benefit and how they can help and how they can do this. And sometimes questions are scary and answers are even more scary. But I'm sure that little girl was extremely grateful. I'm sure that little girl was so happy that they asked for a reading because she was born with good health and vitality. Oh, what a good way to end today. So, beloveds, wherever you are, whatever tools, skills, mysteries you're seeking, stay with Stars of the Morning Light because I will be back. Hit that thumbs up for me and know and trust that you are loved and you can ultimately always trust yourself, stars. Thank you for listening, and always thank you to the great Edgar Cayce, who is still with all of us. Bye, folks.